creaks beneath my feet with a muffled sound. With every step I take inside this cabin, the echo of humidity mixes with the crackle of the structure that insists on resisting time. The leak at the bottom sets the rhythm of the weight. Every drop that falls on the dirty stone floor sounds like a cruel reminder that time here is not on my side. The air is heavier today. That smell of wet earth rising through the open cracks, mixed with the metallic smell of rust from the dark corners, reminds me that there is no longer any protection. The snow melted. Now there's only mud and footprints that aren't mine. Last night was too long. I heard footsteps around 3 in the morning, paused. Slow, as if someone was feeling their way outside. He didn't dare knock, didn't even try to get in. He just walked around like someone who wanted to be noticed. Today, I found the brand, a wooden cross stuck in the mud next to the stacked firewood that I can hardly use anymore. She wasn't there yesterday, and I know it wasn't me who put it up. Since I asked for help in the last video, dozens of messages have arrived. Codes, names of saints, forgotten shrines. That's how I found this cabin. You helped me get here, and I'm grateful for that, in truth. But now I can't stay anymore. Before leaving, there is something that needs to be said. There are truths that cannot wait any longer. Today is about a man who for decades deceived the church, a priest who lived among altars and applause, but hid behind the scenes a story of abuse, lies, and perversion. Marshal Maciel, founder of the Legionaries of Christ, a name that for a long time was synonymous with holiness. But behind the cassock, there lived a predator, a man who abused dozens of seminarians, who had children with different women, who lied, manipulated, and was still protected. The story I'm about to tell goes far beyond a scandal. She reveals how silence and power come together to erase voices and keep masks of holiness intact. The Vatican knew. There are documents, stories, archived confessions, white-collar men who chose not to see. They preferred to protect the structure, even though they knew it was being used as a shield by a criminal. Maciel built an empire within the church itself, and this empire was armored by influence, money, and fear. Those who dared to denounce him were silenced, transferred, erased from official history. But the truth does not disappear. She waits, and today she returns. As the wind invades this shelter and the cold spreads across my back, I think about how this system continues to operate. As there are other Macils hidden behind the colorful stained glass windows, there are still seminarians living under silence, faithful, who don't know that their donations were used to pay for schools for children that the priest never took care of. Women who carry memories they would rather forget, and a name that still echoes in certain pulpits as if it were a saint. But it's not. That's why this video exists, to show what doesn't fit in Sunday sermons, to break the cycle of silence that protects corrupt people and hides the signs. Every time you write something like, "I don't shut up," in the comments, something breaks in this system, because it's not just words, it's resistance, it's collective memory being formed, even in the midst of mud, even when everything seems to want to push us back into the dark. The sound of the wind increased. The door creaks more than it should. But before I leave, I needed to say this. I needed to put it on record. This man deceived the Vatican. He fooled papas, deceived the world. But you can no longer deceive history. And now, you know. So leave your thoughts below. Say what needs to be said. Tag who needs to hear it. Because there are names that only survive because silence protects them. And today, we start to change that. Word for word, gesture for gesture, truth for truth. Maciel was more than a priest in an impeccable cassock. He was the symbol of what many within the Catholic Church presented as a model of vocation, of obedience, of fidelity to the teaching profession. Founder of the Legionaries of Christ, his image was polished with care, promoted at all levels of the ecclesiastical hierarchy as an example of spiritual leadership. His words were circulated at retreats, conferences, and training meetings. His figure was seen as a beacon for Catholic youth, especially among seminarians. But the truth hidden beneath that surface was much darker than what ordinary eyes could reach. Martial Maciel was at the same time a predator, a man who, in the shadows of power and under the complicit silence of the Vatican structures, built a path of abuse, manipulation, and lies that hurt the souls of dozens of young people with vocations. He used confession, one of the Church's most sacred sacraments, as a trap. What should have been a place of healing, repentance, and a fresh start became a stage for harassment, embarrassment, and psychological violence. The reports I found are almost identical. Insecure young people, full of faith, entrusted to the guidance of someone who wore the mask of the sacred, and, behind it, hid a cold and calculating predator. For years, he sexually abused seminarians, vulnerable teenagers, isolated from their families, immersed in an environment of blind obedience, ready to sacrifice everything in the name of God. Maciel took advantage of this absolute dedication to dominate, threaten, manipulate. And the most devastating thing is to realize that even with so many signs, even with so many voices whispering the truth behind the scenes, the Church chose to remain silent. The protection of Martial Maciel was not accidental. It was built, structured, powered. Pope John Paul II, a man whose holiness is still revered by millions, publicly called him an effective guide of youth. He praised him in audiences, promoted him in the highest circles of the Holy See. On several occasions, he placed him as an example to be followed. This papal recognition shielded Maciel. He created a shield around his image. Any accusation that emerged was viewed with suspicion. How dare they question the man who had the direct blessing of the Pope? But what John Paul II knew, and what he ignored, still remains shrouded in shadow. There are those who say that the pontiff was not clearly informed. There are those who argue that he knew, but preferred to preserve the institution rather than deal with the scandal. While receiving applause, Maciel led a double life, multiple to be more exact. He didn't just abuse young people, he also had relationships with women in different countries. He had children he hid for years, supporting them with financial resources diverted from the Legionaries of Christ themselves. The order he founded and presented as a model of discipline and sanctity actually financed the life of a man who despised the vows he professed to profess. In the documents I analyzed, I found receipts, transfer records, even lists of gifts sent to these women. Everything was meticulously noted. There was control, there was intention. This parallel life was not accidental, it was planned. It was the reflection of a man who knew he was above ecclesiastical law, above suspicion, above consequence. And scarier than all that, he was right. For decades, no one really confronted him. No superior, no cardinal, no bishop stood up against him with sufficient firmness. On the contrary, many protected him. They praised him, they promoted him. And the pain of the victims? Ignored, archived, discredited. Maciel handled everything masterfully. He knew when to be the devotee, when to be the teacher, when to be the aggressor, and when to be the diplomat, a life of multiple masks, and they are all sacred. Today, his story still troubles the halls of the Vatican. Many prefer not to talk about it. They avoid the name. They rewrite the deeds, delete the photos, but that doesn't change what happened, and it cannot erase the voices of those who had their faith violated by the hands of a man acclaimed as a saint. The Church was silent for years, And now that we know, it is impossible to remain silent. Every time I tell a case like this, more names come to light. More truths are whispered by those who thought they would never be heard. And that's why every word matters. Anyone here following this report understands the weight of what was said. And you know how much this complicit silence shaped not only this scandal, but so many others. So share what you think. What do you feel when you hear all this? Leave your sign below. It's not just a reaction, it's resistance. It is a reminder that we are no longer alone in this search for justice within the church, and there is still much, much more to be revealed. The smell of the old files is still on my clothes, that mix of aged paper, dried leather, and the fine dust that rises with each page turned. It's a smell that sticks, that enters the nostrils and stays in the throat like a bitter memory. The last time I went down to the underground archive, beneath the polished marble rooms of the old building, I knew exactly what I was looking for, but I had no idea what I would find. The lights below flicker, the hallways are cold, even in summer, and the silence that fills every corner is not peace, it's complicity. A silence that carries the weight of decades, hidden between sealed envelopes and boxes catalogued with cold codes. On a forgotten shelf, among financial records from the 1980s and vocation reports, I found an envelope sealed with red wax, marked with a single handwritten inscription. 1997, confidential, MM. Cold sweat ran down the back of my neck. I sat right there on the floor and opened it. Inside, a handwritten letter from a former seminarian. The handwriting was shaky, slanted, like someone struggling to write something they don't want to remember. The first sentence was a punch. He abused me for 6 years straight. Are you going to keep protecting me? I read each line like someone holding a cracked mirror, knowing that the reflection there was not just his, but that of many. What destroyed me most was not the content of the letter. It was the fact that she was there, archived, ignored, forgotten, or worse, kept on purpose. No response notes, no disciplinary measures, no investigation, nothing, just silence, encapsulated in a cardboard box. But the answer to that letter did come, just not in words. The seminarian was threatened. According to an attached note, he was instructed to withdraw his complaint to preserve the peace of the community. After that, it disappeared. Today, he lives in hiding outside the country. He no longer has faith nor church, and the most painful thing, he no longer has a voice. It was deleted, like so many others. I continued searching. I found a thicker folder labeled "To Person 2000. When I opened it, I was faced with a sequence of bank statements, personal letters and receipts, names and dates filled out firmly. There were records of payments made to private educational institutions in Europe and Latin America. The destination of the money? Schools for Martial Maciel's children. That's right. The man who swore obedience, poverty and chastity used the coffers of his own congregation to finance the lives of his illegitimate children. They were real names, with dates of birth, records, doctors, license plates, everything. One of the receipts left a deep impression on me. The payment of tuition fees for a Swiss school. High value divided into 3 installments. Payment coming from an account that went through intermediaries linked to the Legionaries of Christ. Everything was there, documented, official. Inside the same folder, I found a thank you letter signed by one of the women with whom Maciel had a parallel life. She thanked the constant care and asked for more discretion with future transfers. Discretion, a recurring word in the files related to him. Further on, another shocking document, an internal memo warning that Maciel was at risk of public exposure and suggesting the redirection of resources to protect institutional integrity. Translation: hide evidence, cover tracks, protect not the victim, but the aggressor. And once again, the system responded not with justice, but with shielding, because the structure that protected him was too powerful, and his influence went far beyond the cassock he wore. As I write this, I hear again the sound of the wind passing through the cracks in the cabin, now mixed with the sound of wet branches breaking outside. Mud took over the surroundings. The protection that the snow provided was gone. The tracks are visible, like the documents I found, like the names that were ignored. There's something about this kind of revelation that gnaws. And it's not just because of injustice, it's for clarity. Because once you see this side of the church, the side that covers, that protects, that negotiates silence, it is impossible to believe in the calm, shining surface of the altars again. This is where many give up. They close their eyes. They change the subject. They say it's an exaggeration, that this doesn't really represent the church. But that's exactly the problem. Yes, it represents. It represents a part that for years was kept untouchable. And now it is being exposed, little by little, document by document, name by name, story by story. If you've come this far with me in this video, you know the weight of what is being told. And you also know how much this truth needs to circulate. It shows that you are awake, who is willing to face this reality with me. And if you want to see more people accessing this content, help this video reach further. A simple gesture, a tap on the like button, could be the difference between this story being forgotten or echoing where it needs to be. We're not done yet. There is still a lot inside these folders, and I promise to tell everything, because there are things that can no longer be left in the dark, even more so when the dark is now knocking on the door. The notes I found inside that folder, marked with the symbol of the Congregation for Institutes of Consecrated Life, left no doubt Martial Maciel was not alone. Behind him was a wall of names, positions and titles that formed a silent and powerful system. It was a network, a structure within the structure of the Catholic Church itself, functioning as a shield, not to protect the victims, but to ensure that he, Maciel, remained untouchable. What many call ecclesiastical authority, behind the scenes, behaved like an institutional shielding mechanism. Among the papers were copies of official documents signed by renowned cardinals, men who occupied chairs in the main Vatican commissions. Some names I recognized right away. I had already seen them at canonization ceremonies, in public interviews, talking about values, chastity, vocation, apostolic zeal. But there, on those yellowed sheets, were their signatures authorizing movements, protecting Maciel's name, minimizing complaints with carefully chosen expressions such as unfounded complaints or possible spiritual error of interpretation. It was surreal. It looked like a theater with dozens of actors pretending not to see what was happening behind the curtain. Maciel had allies at the highest levels of the Catholic hierarchy, and it wasn't just out of friendship or doctrinal affinity. He delivered results. The order he founded, the Legionaries of Christ, grew in number of vocations, in fundraising, and in political and diplomatic influence. Young seminarians multiplied under his command, and this multiplication was seen as a sign of blessing. The structures of the church, thirsty for renewal and numbers to justify its global strength, saw it as an effective instrument and preferred not to see what else was behind it. In one of the internal reports, dated 2001, I found a sentence written by a Latin American archbishop addressed to the then prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. He gives us vocations, influence, and results. We must not fuel scandals. That sentence ate me up inside. She explained everything. The decision was not the result of ignorance, but of convenience. The abuse, the deviation, the lie. Everything was relativized in the name of the mission, in the name of pastoral effectiveness. That's when we realize that the problem is not a man. It is the logic that sustains its permanence. It is the agreed silence. Many priests knew, many bishops knew, but they didn't talk, because they knew what would happen to anyone who dared to break this pact. Anyone who talked too much was transferred, sent on missions in remote regions, without structure, without resources. He was removed from public life, neutralized with discretion. Those who insisted, who gathered evidence, who pressed, were silenced more forcefully. Some received vague communications about pastoral inadequacies. Others were investigated under false moral allegations. The system knew how to protect its people, and it knew how to eliminate inconveniences. This gear worked perfectly. There were regular meetings between the leaders of the legionaries and strategic members of the Roman Curia. Meetings that did not leave formal records, but that moved decisions within Vatican congregations. I saw in a document dated 1999 the scheduling of a private audience between Michael and an influential European cardinal. The official reason was talks about vocational expansion, but next to the document there was a handwritten note: "Take an envelope with the material, confidential." The contents of that envelope never appear in the records, but the context is clear. There was no discussion of vocation there. Control was discussed, shielding, strategy. Even among the closest believers, Maciel was treated as someone above suspicion. Many saw him as a new saint, a messianic figure. Young people grew up hearing stories about his piety, his intelligence, his suffering in silence. And this was no coincidence. The very order he founded cultivated this image zealously. They created internal materials extolling their virtues. They produced short videos and articles for the communities, reinforcing their devotion to the founder. The cult of personality was part of the plan. The higher he was in the collective perception, the harder it was to question him. What scares the most is realizing that all of this was fed with consciousness. It wasn't naivety, it wasn't carelessness, it was calculation, accomplice, and not just an accomplice, an active accomplice. Church ethics commissions were mobilized to review complaints against him, always the same conclusions: inconclusive, there is not enough evidence, lack of coherence in the reports. And always, after these decisions, the complainants disappeared from the records. Their voices were lost in the corridors that learn to whisper when the truth starts to bother them too much. As the wood of this cabin crackles under the never-ending humidity, I keep thinking about the eyes of every seminarian who has had their vocation tarnished by this system. In the void left in those who believed, they surrendered, and then they were betrayed. This system not only shielded an abuser, he destroyed souls, silenced sincere hearts, and it continues to work. Because the logic is still the same: protect the image, not the truth. Defend structure, not the gospel. If these words touched you in some way, if you feel the weight of what this means, keep this story alive. Leave a gesture, a like. It's not about statistics, it's about reach. Every signal you give helps this content to pierce the shield that still exists. There are more, and coming, much more. And now that you've been with me this far, you know what's behind the veil. The files I found were disorganized, as if someone had tried to hastily erase any trace of that other life. But even amid torn papers, folders without covers and photos blurred by time, the truth still screamed. Maciel's double life was not an isolated error, an occasional deviation. It was an entire, carefully engineered system of lies. While the legionaries of Christ promoted his image as an example of purity, obedience, and vocational charisma, he lived a parallel existence made up of luxuries, secret relationships, and hidden children who received everything the church claimed to reject. Maciel maintained homes in at least 3 countries: Rome, where he circulated the corridors of the Vatican with authority; Spain, where he relaxed under false names; and Mexico, where he maintained a domestic routine with one of the women he considered his wife, although she never knew who he really was. The feeling of reading the records and seeing rent receipts signed with pseudonyms at the same time he spoke about holiness and discipline was like watching a ghost move between sacred walls, a specter of impunity. The fake identities were not improvised. They were built with precision, documents with diplomatic seals, credit cards with phantom names, reservations in luxury hotels made by lay intermediaries linked to the legionaries, in bank records, monthly transfers to accounts, linked to the women with whom he had these relationships. They didn't know they shared the same man. And the children? Some only found out after he died. Others, to this day, avoid using their surname. One of the documents that stopped me for minutes was an inheritance plan. Written by a lawyer hired by the congregation, the text detailed the division of assets between the illegitimate children. It used the term protected beneficiaries and recommended that the process be conducted outside traditional legal channels for institutional and stability reasons. Apartments, land, international accounts, and even a collection of works of sacred art were listed there. And all of this is supported with money from the church, donation money, money from pious widows, from simple families, from young people who believed they were financing missions. Among the papers, I also found family photos, some old, low quality, taken at discreet parties. He was smiling with a child on his lap, wearing casual clothes and sunglasses. The look was not the same as the official photos. There, far from the ecclesiastical palaces, he seemed comfortable. A man with two lives, two routines, two personalities, and the cassock. It was just the badge that gave him access to everything. The church was his armor, your shield, your company, your excuse. While he said masses in the morning, on previous nights he dined with his lovers in discreet restaurants. He attended social events as a Mexican diplomat. According to one of the business cards I found in a torn envelope, he lived as few priests dared to live, not just in contradiction to the vows, but in complete disregard for them. He built an empire on the faith of others and profited from the silence the system guaranteed. At the same time that his image was exalted in seminars, dozens of victims, spread across different countries, carried invisible marks. Marks that do not appear in ceremony photos or in the minutes of congregation meetings. Marks that were engraved in memories that try to be forgotten but come back, in sleepless nights, in nightmares, in disenchantment with God. And many of these survivors still walk today without anyone apologizing, without the institution that hurt them recognizing them, because the system does not allow cracks. He would rather rewrite history than repair the truth. While out here the cold wets the corners of the hut and the walls creak under the weight of the humidity, I wonder how many more, like him, are still hiding under the weight of the cassock. How many live double lives, knowing that the structure will continue to protect their faces as long as they continue to deliver influence, vocations, and figures. Because for many, that's what it's all about. Numbers, not people, not faith, not justice. These revelations need to come out of the shadows. They need to be spoken, heard, and shared, not for sensationalism, but because the only way to weaken this structure is to take away the light that it pretends to project and show what is behind the veil. With each new video, each new page read, this system feels the blow. And you, who have been with me until now, are part of this. Your presence here transforms this space into something more than a simple video. Make all of this a living complaint, a resistance, and keeping that resistance pulsing is easier than it seems. A click on the subscribe button turns this channel into a fixed point of memory and courage. Make the next truth find more ears. It makes fewer victims feel alone, and it means that at least around here, the truth is no longer suppressed. There is still a lot to show, and what comes next is even dirtier. But for now, I need to tell you what I found in the next folder. The one who not only brought money or inheritance, but records of what they did to those who tried to speak. And this is the kind of document that kept me up at night for more than one night. The light from the lamp weakens more. Every minute, it flickers, as if fighting to stay lit, as if the wire itself knows something is approaching. Outside, I heard the metallic sound again, a dry, repeated noise, like something being dragged or lightly tapped against a wooden surface. It's not the sound of animals. It's human, and most disturbingly, he is patient, like someone waiting, as someone who knows that cold and fear do more than strength. Inside, the humidity took over. The boards creak, and the shadows seem longer. This hut, which once gave me shelter and time, now seems like an abandoned altar, a sanctuary desecrated by truths that no one wanted to hear, or that many knew, but pretended not to see. And among these truths, there is one that still haunts me, perhaps the most painful of all. There are still those who defend Martial Maciel. Yes, even after the evidence, the reports, the documents, there are still priests, seminarians, lay people and Catholic leaders who treat him as if he had been a victim of slander. In some training houses, his name is mentioned with nostalgia. His methods are still taught. His texts still circulate among novices as if they were spiritual gold, as if nothing had happened, as if abuse were exaggeration, reports were bad faith, victims, liars. It destroys me, not just for what it says about him, but for what it says about the structure that created him. A structure that is capable of producing not only the abuser, but also the cult of the abuser, that turns the predator into a martyr and silences the pain as if it were unwanted noise. It is this perverse inversion that keeps the system working, that strengthens silence. What a threat to anyone who dares to break with him. And that's why this series exists. That's why you being here matters, because everyone who watches, who reads, who listens carefully helps to break this network. It helps to unravel this fabric sewn with lies and protected by well-ironed cassocks. The video you are seeing now is not just a report, it's a living complaint. And you are not here by chance. You who have been with me up to this point, write again, hard, with conscience, with purpose. I don't shut up. These 4 words are more than a symbol. They are a written resistance. They are a wall against oblivion. Every time this phrase appears in the comments, it occupies a space that was previously omitted. And that bothers you. They see, they count, they measure each reaction. And when they see hundreds, thousands, saying they won't shut up, they know something is changing. You are not just a spectator, you are a witness, an active part of this investigation that begins deep in a cabin, but echoes through rooms of power that were never imagined to be exposed. Every video, every excerpt, every word spoken here is fuel for a truth that needs to run faster than the lie, faster than censorship, faster than those that are coming. Because they are coming. The mud outside doesn't lie. I saw new footprints this morning, deeper, closer to the back door, boot prints, 4 pairs, maybe 5, and they were fresh. They didn't come by chance. It wasn't someone lost in the mountains. He wasn't a hunter. These were people who know what I'm doing here. This understands what is being revealed, and he doesn't want it to continue. It's not paranoia, no more. The first time I felt this, I doubted myself. I thought it was the cold, the tiredness. Now I know how to recognize it. The pattern repeats itself, always. After a stronger, more revealing video, the signs appear. An overturned crucifix left in the snow, a torn envelope with blank pages and a drawn symbol, a sound of footsteps that never ends, and now, the constant presence, like a lurking figure. But I can't stop. Because you are there, because what has already been told is just the beginning, and because what is yet to come is much more serious. There is a folder that I haven't revealed yet. It's here, under the floorboards, among the soaked wood. In it there are copies of internal communications, exchanges between cardinals, decisions that directly involve not only Maciel, but others who still occupy important positions. Men who today speak about justice, but who in the past signed silence. That's why I need this content to keep spreading, because this is not a common channel. It is not content made by numbers. It is done out of necessity, by conscience, and by faith, the true one, not the one manipulated by convenience. The faith that is not afraid to ask, who isn't afraid to see what's behind the curtain. If you haven't joined this journey yet, now is a good time, because what comes next needs more eyes, more listening, more voices ready to say, enough. Here, in this moment, with the light flickering and the sounds outside increasing, I can say clearly, this story does not end here, and you now are already part of it. Signing up here transforms you from listener to guardian, on watch, in an essential piece, so that this truth continues to live when I can no longer speak. There are more coming, more names, more documents, and there are risks too. But as long as there is a thread of voice, as long as this lamp lasts another night, I will continue. Because now, it's not just me, it's us. And the truth, even when threatened, when it finds shelter in many voices, becomes impossible to bury. What scares me most isn't just what I've seen, nor what I've already revealed. It is what is still standing, intact, revered. It's knowing that even after everything, Martial Maciel's name continues to be revered within certain walls. In seminars, in retreats, in vocational training, there are still walls that hold paintings with his portrait. There are still libraries with books written by him. There are still superiors who repeat his teachings as if nothing had been discovered. It's as if the truth, even after shouting, was still forced to kneel before the lie. Recently, I received a letter written by a young seminarian. He didn't say the name. It didn't even need to. The content of the letter said it all. He said that during his training, one of the teachers still cited Maciel as an example of a visionary man and spiritual father of Catholic youth. He said that his pedagogical methods were considered a model for training leaders. This did not happen in 1995, nor in 2000. The letter was dated February of this year. Now, there is still a structure within the church that has chosen to forget, that treats the truth as inconvenient and history as something that can be edited. As I read these letters, as I review the hidden documents, as I listen to old audio recordings of muffled statements, the question that comes to mind is, how many more are there? How many are still active, celebrating Mass, laying on hands, receiving confessions? How many continue in silence, camouflaged by the respect that the cassock still commands? The system that protected Maciel was not dismantled. He just changed his name, his address, his face, but the logic remains the same. Preserve the image, preserve the structure, negotiate silence. You who are here, listening to this, reading this, are not just a spectator. You have become a witness. And witnesses have a role that goes beyond watching. It is the one who carries the memory, who transforms forgetfulness into denunciation, who shares what many try to keep quiet. This series continues to live because of every "I don't shut up" that appears in the comments. It is this echo that breaks the dome, where so many scandals tried to be buried. Every comment, every share, every voice that rises here is like a crack in an old wall that for decades has resisted all kinds of truth. Now she is shaking, and it's not much. I'd like to say I'm safe, that there is time, that I can still plan my next steps calmly, but it wouldn't be true. The mud outside shows fresh tracks. The footprints that appear in the morning are not mine. The noises I heard last night near the back window weren't the creaking wood. There was weight, there was presence. Someone approached. It stopped, and he remained silent for minutes, as if observing, as someone who listens, as if to confirm. Today, at dawn, I found an object left at the side entrance of the cabin. A red candle, stuck in the mud, unlit. On the side, a black ribbon, wrapped in a neat knot, typical of those used in liturgical vestments. This wasn't just a warning, it was a brand, a reminder that they know what are they close to, and that they don't like what is being said here. There are still documents that I have not revealed, folders that I haven't even opened completely, some bear names that to this day occupy leadership positions. Others link Maciel to political influences that go beyond the walls of the Vatican. There are connections with accounts in tax havens, with construction contracts for ghost seminaries, with land purchases made through cooperatives linked to protected families. There is evidence that Maciel was not only covered up, but that he operated as the centerpiece of a system of power that mixed faith, money, and blackmail. This information has not yet been organized. Some are encoded, others are partially destroyed by time, by mold, by the attempt to disappear with history, but they still exist, and they will be shown with caution, firmly, and with the certainty that every detail matters. Meanwhile, inside, everything is damp. The walls. Breathe with me. The fireplace no longer heats like it used to. The fire burns weakly, consuming the rest of the firewood I got yesterday afternoon when I went to the lower part of the trail. Down below, the ground is no longer firm. It sinks easily, leaves marks. It won't be long before someone follows these brands back to me. Therefore, this video may be one of the last recorded here. I need to change. Again. The hiding place that once gave me shelter now exposes me. The cabin is given over to humidity, silence, and eyes that peer from afar. And yet, as I write this, as I adjust this shaking camera on the makeshift tripod, I still believe it's worth it. It's worth it because there are people on the other side who won't accept being silent any longer, who no longer want to see the same names being exalted while lives were destroyed. People who understand that truth and faith can, yes, walk together, but never under the shadow of omission. Therefore, for those who have been following, since the beginning, or for those who have just arrived, this space is ours, a point of resistance amid so much noise, a place where faith is not used as a shield for abuse, but as a tool to expose what needs to be said. Keeping this space alive is easy, but has enormous value. One click to subscribe turns this channel into a constant point of contact. It allows the next truths not to be lost. May each new piece I reveal find an echo, and that history cannot be buried without resistance. The tension in here is almost palpable now. The lamp on the table blinked twice. The last time this happened was the day the helicopters passed low over the valley and then disappeared behind the mountains. I don't doubt they found me. Maybe someone said too much. Perhaps one of the documents I sent was intercepted. Or maybe it's just fear. Fear taking the form of intuitions that, so far, have been proven right. I'm leaving now. The backpack on your back, the envelope well kept, the tight heart. The door ajar, the wood is wet. The ground sinks beneath my feet, but I still walk, even if unsure, even if scared. Even if alone, because there's something in the air, smell of incense and gasoline, and you already know what that means.